Never thought I'd hear someone call 911 on me for taking back my own package. But that's exactly what happened on a quiet Tuesday morning in Maplewood Estates. One moment, I was grabbing a brown Amazon box with my name on it. The next, my neighbor, the HOA president, was screaming that I was stealing. Within minutes, police lights flashed across my driveway, and as the neighbors peeked from their blinds, I realized this wasn't just about a missing package. It was about what was inside it, something that would expose the biggest secret our neighborhood had ever buried. I never thought a quiet Tuesday morning could turn into the kind of story you only see on late-night news shows, the kind where people shake their heads and say, "That could never happen in my neighborhood." But that's exactly what happened in Maplewood Estates. A neighborhood that looked so perfect. You'd swear it was built for a real estate commercial. Every lawn trimmed like velvet, fences painted identical shades of white, driveways spotless, and neighbors who smiled just long enough to prove they weren't antisocial. I was Jason Campbell, the new guy. Well, not exactly new. I'd been there for 3 years, long enough to learn every quirk of the community, but still too short to blend in with the lifelong residents who treated the HOA like holy scripture. And then there was Nora Hall, the HOA president. The queen bee of suburban order. If Maplewood Estates had a crown, she wore it with pride. Nora wasn't elected so much as she seized the position. She moved in, smiled, hosted a welcome brunch, and by the end of that month, she had a clipboard, an office inside the clubhouse, and a small army of volunteers who patrolled the neighborhood like it was their mission field. At first, I thought she was just passionate, one of those type A personalities who liked everything neat and controlled. But I learned soon enough that Nora's obsession with control ran deeper. It wasn't about community pride, it was about power. The first time I crossed paths with her was over something stupid. Paint. I'd repainted my porch railing a soft grey to match my trim. Nothing fancy, but 2 hours into the job, Nora appeared like a ghost, clutching that clipboard and smiling the kind of smile that meant trouble. "That's not the approved shade," she said. "It's grey," I replied. She flipped open a laminated colour chart. "It's storm grey. The approved shade is driftwood grey. Completely different tone. You'll need to repaint." I laughed at first. Thought she was joking. She wasn't. That day, I learned my first Maplewood lesson. In Nora's kingdom, every blade of grass, every mailbox flag, every tone of grey existed by her permission. I repainted it. I didn't want drama. I had better things to do, like my work. I'm a civil engineer, designing drainage systems for towns across the state. I worked from home most days, my world revolving around blueprints and quiet coffee. For the most part, I avoided HOA politics, but that changed when little things started going missing. It began with a package, just a small brown Amazon box, mechanical parts for a client prototype. The tracking app said, delivered at 11:04 a.m. But when I checked, nothing was there. I assumed porch pirates. It happens. I reported it, got a replacement, moved on. Then another package vanished, and another. By the fourth one, I started to realize this wasn't random, and I wasn't the only one. Mrs. Sanders, 2 houses down, said she was missing 3 deliveries. The Millers across the street said their outdoor lights disappeared. Even old Mr. Jenkins, the quiet veteran at the end of the cul-de-sac, complained that his medication had gone missing. The strange part? Every single disappearance happened right after the mail truck came, but before the HOA's daily inspection. Yes, we actually had daily inspections. Nora's invention. She called it community observation. Every weekday at noon, she or one of her assistants would patrol the streets, clipboard in hand, taking photos of unapproved lawn ornaments, trash cans left visible, or, God forbid, mismatched shutters. I used to joke that she'd install body cams next, but now I wasn't laughing. So one morning, I caught her outside near her Lexus SUV, clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other, wearing that signature pink blazer that looked more like a uniform than an outfit. I said, "Hey Nora, quick question. Have you noticed any missing packages around here?" She squinted behind her sunglasses. "Packages? Yeah, mine have been disappearing lately. Couple of my neighbors too." Her expression didn't change, but her posture did. Slightly straighter, slightly colder. "Well," she said, "some residents leave unsightly boxes on their porches for days. That's not allowed. I mean missing ones," I clarified. Delivered but gone. She smiled. That slow, patronizing smile that felt rehearsed. The HOA has the right to inspect any items that may violate community safety. You'd be surprised what some people order online these days. I blinked. You're saying you open residents' mail? Don't be dramatic, Jason, she said. We simply ensure compliance. It's all in the bylaws. Which bylaw? I asked. The one that says residents must keep the neighborhood safe, she snapped, and walked off. There was something in her tone, a certainty, a subtle arrogance that told me she wasn't joking. That night, I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee and pulled out the HOA handbook, 30 pages of rules, lawn height, garbage placement, pet size, mailbox uniformity. But nowhere did it say anything about mail inspection. Still, I couldn't prove anything. Not yet, so I started documenting. Every delivery, every timestamp, every disappearance. I kept a notebook beside my doorbell, jotting down each package and time. A week later, I caught something strange. At 11:06 a.m., the USPS van stopped by, dropped a box, and drove off. At 11:18, I saw Nora's Lexus pull up. She didn't even park properly. She left the engine running, stepped out, and walked straight up to my porch. She looked around. Then, without hesitation, she grabbed the box and walked back to her car. I froze. It was so casual, so routine, like she'd done it 100 times before. My first instinct was to run outside, confront her, demand she put it back, but something in me said no. She'd twist it, turn it into an HOA violation, make me look like the aggressor. So I stayed quiet. I watched her drive off, heart hammering. That night, I installed a doorbell camera, a hidden one, disguised as a motion sensor light. It recorded directly to the cloud. Then, I set a trap. I ordered another package. Nothing expensive, just a Bluetooth GPS tracker hidden inside a small cardboard box labeled Jason Campbell, private equipment. 2 days later, it arrived. At 11:20 a.m., right on schedule, Nora's Lexus pulled up. Same routine. She looked around, grabbed the package, and drove off. I opened my phone and pulled up the tracker app. A red dot blinked just a few hundred feet away, behind the HOA clubhouse. The clubhouse was the heart of Maplewood. Weekly meetings, yoga sessions, pool passes, all of it ran through there. Behind it stood a small white shed with a faded sign that read, "Maintenance." That was where the tracker signal stopped. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my mail. Something bigger was going on. I drove by casually that afternoon, pretending to check my mailbox. The shed's padlock looked brand new, and parked beside it, Nora's Lexus. I took photos, documented everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain wouldn't stop spinning. If she'd taken mine, how many others? What was she doing with them? Why store them instead of stealing and selling? The next morning, I called the local police, Maplewood County PD. The officer on the line sounded half amused when I told him, "Your HOA president's stealing packages." He said, "I have video," I replied. He paused. "Okay, that changes things. Bring it in." I emailed the footage. A few hours later, a cruiser drove slowly through our neighborhood. The officers stopped by the clubhouse, spoke with Nora, and, just like that, left. No arrests. No statements. The next day, I received an HOA notice taped to my door. I laughed out loud. She'd reported me for my camera. That's when I knew, if I wanted justice, I'd have to handle it myself. But first, I needed proof that would survive even Nora's influence. The next few days passed like a slow burn. Every time I walked outside, I could feel Nora's eyes on me, or at least the weight of her invisible authority pressing down from those laminated rules she worshipped. I kept my head down, waved politely when I had to, and acted like nothing had changed. But inside I was planning. I wanted to catch her, not just on video, but in a way she couldn't erase, twist, or report as non-compliance. The HOA might have been her kingdom, but I was done playing her subject. I decided to talk to a few neighbours quietly, ones I trusted. Mrs. Sanders invited me over for tea like always. Her husband had passed years ago, but she never missed a chance to gossip about Maplewood. "Do you ever get your packages late?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She sighed, setting her teacup down. "I stopped ordering online months ago, dear. The last 3 things I bought never showed up. Nora said they were probably stolen. Did you report it?" "Oh, she handled it," she said with a wave of her hand. said the HOA would look into it. That sent a chill down my spine. Later that evening, I knocked on the miller's door. Tom Miller, a quiet guy in his 40s, answered. "Hey," I said. "This might sound strange, but have you ever had packages disappear?" He frowned. "Yeah, actually. New lights for the backyard. Vanished. The HOA said they were removed because they didn't meet light pollution standards." My heart dropped. "Removed? As in taken?" He shrugged. "That's what Nora told us. She said we'd violated section something something. Honestly, man, I didn't argue. I just bought new ones. By the time I walked home, I knew exactly what was happening. Nora wasn't just stealing. She was confiscating, hiding behind HOA authority to take anything she claimed wasn't approved. It was brilliant in a terrifying way. I had evidence, but I wanted something undeniable, something that would make the entire neighborhood see who she really was. That night, I drove to the clubhouse after dark. The streetlights threw long shadows across the perfect lawns, and the air smelled faintly like fertilizer and fear. I parked down the block, slipped on gloves, and approached the maintenance shed. The padlock gleamed under the moonlight. I crouched, pulled out a small lockpick set, a remnant from my college days of tinkering with everything mechanical. And within seconds, the lock clicked open, the door creaked softly as I pushed it. And there it was, a mountain of boxes, not 10 or 20, hundreds, stacked to the ceiling. Amazon, UPS, FedEx, all with labels from houses across Maplewood. Some looked weeks old. Others were still sealed tight, fresh from delivery. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The fluorescent bulb flickered weakly, revealing rows of people's lives. Medication, kids' toys, electronics, shoes, tools, books. Everything that had violated Nora's version of order. I found my own packages in the middle stack, buried under a pile of others. But it wasn't just packages. There were files, HOA violation reports, hundreds of them, many with photos of houses, people, and private notes in her handwriting. One folder was labelled Residents to Watch. My name was third on the list. Next to it, she'd written, Tends to question rules, possible agitator, keep under observation. My blood turned to ice. I pulled out my phone and started recording everything. The boxes, the files, the labels. Then, I packed a few small boxes as proof, relocked the door, and left. That night, I emailed the footage anonymously to every single homeowner in Maplewood. The next morning, the neighborhood exploded. People gathered outside, crowding the clubhouse. The air buzzed with outrage and betrayal. Nora showed up in her pink blazer, looking confused, then horrified as residents started waving printed screenshots of the video. Someone yelled, "You've been stealing from us!" Another shouted, "You took my medication!" For the first time, I saw her lose control. She tried to speak, but her voice trembled. "Everyone, please, this is a misunderstanding." "Then open the shed," Tom Miller barked. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. Her lips tightened. "That area is restricted maintenance property." Before she could finish, two residents broke off from the crowd and walked to the shed. The padlock was still there, but they'd brought bolt cutters. It snapped open with a metallic crack. The door swung wide. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Boxes spilled out. Proof beyond argument. Even from where I stood, I could see people recognizing their names, pointing, shouting, crying. Nora's face went pale. The police arrived within minutes. It was the same officer I'd talked to before. He took one look at the shed and sighed. That kind of weary sigh that says, "You were right." They took Nora aside, spoke to her for nearly half an hour, then escorted her into the back of a patrol car. She didn't resist, didn't even look back. For a moment, it felt like justice. The next few days were a blur. News trucks showed up. Local reporters interviewed residents. Packagegate, they called it. Turns out, Nora had been holding confiscated items in that shed for months, claiming they were non-compliant deliveries under HOA authority. In truth, she'd been selling some online through fake accounts and keeping the rest as leverage against homeowners she didn't like. The HOA board was dissolved pending investigation. Residents were told to reclaim their packages. For a while, Maplewood Estates looked almost normal. Kids played in the street again. People waved without that fake smile. Someone even painted their shutters red. just because they could. But peace never lasts long here. A few months later, I got a letter, no return address, just my name, written neatly in blue ink. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no message, just a copy of an old HOA form with the Maplewood logo. At the bottom, in faint pencil, someone had written, "We always watch." I stared at it for a long time. Maybe it was a joke, maybe it wasn't. The HOA had been restructured under new leadership, but many of Nora's assistants still lived here. Some of them were already talking about reinstating order. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear footsteps outside my porch, the soft crunch of shoes on gravel, stopping just long enough to make me wonder. And once, when I checked my Ring feed, I thought I saw a figure in a pink blazer standing near the mailbox. The camera glitched before I could be sure. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe Maplewood Estates is just one of those places where perfection hides rot beneath the surface, where control masquerades as safety, and where people like Nora Hall never really disappear. The neighborhood looks perfect again. Lawns trimmed, fences painted, everyone pretending we've moved on. But sometimes, when I see the mail truck stop at the corner, I still feel that same uneasy chill. Because in Maplewood Estates, nothing stays lost forever, and some things you find, you wish you hadn't. And that's how it happened. One quiet neighborhood, one package, and one truth that no one saw coming. People like Nora Hall come and go, but the systems they build, they linger. They hide behind rules, signatures, and the illusion of order. And sometimes, all it takes to expose them is one person who refuses to look away. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your HOA president pulled something like this? Would you stay quiet or fight back? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next HOA mystery story. Because trust me, in neighborhoods like these, the drama never really ends. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and watch your mailbox.